The 40-year-old wife of an army officer, a resident of Mohali who didn't wish to be identified, said she is here to express solidarity. Women need to get out of the comfort of their homes and be a part of the movement. I have come here because this is the need of the hour. I am an army wife and we all stand with the farmers, she said. Ramkali Jangda, a 57-year-old housewife who works with a local NGO working towards women empowerment in a village in Haryana, said the Mahila Sansad should have happened on day one, but she is glad it has happened. At the parliament, speakers and deputy speakers included CPI leader Annie Raja, Jagmati Sangwan, National Vice President, All India Democratic Women's Association and activist Medhapatkar. In 2 of the 3 sessions, an agriculture minister was also made to sit and speak. Resolutions passed. Ms. Raja told The Hindu that 3 resolutions were passed on Monday. Women should be given 33% reservation in Parliament. This bill has been pending. We have passed a resolution here. It's high time it was passed in the Lok Sabha as well, she said. Ms. Sangwan said the Parliament was essential because women shared issues on the 3 farm laws which will impact them directly. We spoke about how we should be given land rights because we don't have any rights whatsoever. A woman will have to repay the loan in case her farmer husband takes his life but is not allowed to take loans, she said. Their labor, hard work, skills, and knowledge should be taken on board by people's movements, said Samayukta Kisan Morcha referring to a resolution passed in the Mahila Kisan Sansad. DCW writes to government on scheme for widows. It claims to have identified 791 women who lost their husbands due to COVID-19. Staff reporter, New Delhi. The Delhi Commission for Women, DCW, on Monday wrote to the Women and Child Development, WCD, Department after identifying 791 women who have lost their husbands due to COVID-19. The Women's Panel sought the implementation of schemes announced by the Delhi government for financial aid to such families. The DCW said 79 Mahila Panchayats under the commission carried out surveys in their respective areas to collect the data. According to the data provided by the DCW, 92.79% of the widows were in the 18 to 60 years age group, while the rest of them were senior citizens. The report added 774 women had children. In its letter to the WCD department, the Women's Panel said that around 384 women had up to 2 children while over 45% of women had 3 to 5 children. The DCW stated that the survey showed that 28.57% of the widows had no source of income and were financially dependent on their husbands. Also, the family income of 60.93% of the women was 15,000 Indian rupees or less. DCW chairperson Swati Maliwal said, "We are sending a detailed social survey report to the government so that the benefits of the scheme can be passed on to these women." In the letter, Ms. Maliwal said, the WCD department is requested to ensure that the schemes of the government, especially the Mukhyamantri COVID-19 Parivar Arthik Sahayata Yojana, reach them. It is also requested that the district magistrates concerned be given instructions to ensure the vaccination of these women on priority. Microbes from human, animal excreta found above desirable limits in Yamuna very difficult to achieve bathing quality standards, government report. Toxic foam floating in the Yamuna in Delhi. File photo Sundeep Saxena. Staff reporter, New Delhi. Levels of fecal coliform, microbes from human and animal excreta, is above desirable limits in all points tested in the Yamuna in Delhi, except for Pala where the river enters the capital, as per a Delhi government report. The report submitted to the Union Ministry of Jal Shakti also stated that in the absence of a minimum environmental flow of water, of the Yamuna in Delhi, it is very difficult to achieve even bathing quality standards of the river water. Minimum environmental flow for the dilution of the polluted water in the Yamuna in Delhi is required to meet the desired water quality levels in the river for bathing purpose, i.e. BOD 3 mg/L and DO 5 mg/L, the report read. For bathing in a river, the desirable level of fecal coliform in the water is 500 mpn/100 ml or lesser, as per the Central Pollution Control Board. But the level was as high as 1,40,000 mpn/100 ml, 280 times the desired level at Okala Barrage, a point along the river in Delhi, as per the report. Over 80% polluted. The 22 km stretch of Yamuna from Wazirabad to Okala in Delhi, which is less than 2% of the river length, accounts for about 80% of the pollution load in the river. According to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, an environmental flow is the water provided within a river, wetland or coastal zone to maintain ecosystems and their benefits where there are competing water uses and where flows are regulated. Thane Sanctuary proposed as MMR's Ramsar site mangrove cell awaiting approval from State Wetland Authority. Staff reporter Mumbai. The Mumbai metropolitan region is likely to get its first Ramsar site at the Thane Creek Flamingo Sanctuary, with the Maharashtra mangrove cell submitting the proposal for approval to the State Wetland Authority. A Ramsar site is a wetland area designated to be of international importance under the Ramsar Convention, an intergovernmental environmental treaty that provides the framework for national action and international cooperation for the conservation and wise use of wetlands and their resources. Virendra Tiwari, additional Principal Chief Conservator of Forests, Mangrove Cell, announced the move at the 4th Climate Resilient Maharashtra Town Hall. A proposal to declare Thane Creek as a Ramsar site has been submitted and we are working on it with the Environment Department, he said. The Mangrove Cell is awaiting approval from the State Wetland Authority, which is headed by Environment Minister Aditya Thackeray, and is closely working with the Environment Department for its speedy approval. Following this, it can be sent to the central government, Mr. Tiwari said. The town hall was organized by Climate Voices, a collective of 3 organizations: Purpose, ASAR, and Climate Trends, along with the Environment and Climate Change Department's Maji Vasundhara initiative on Monday, which was observed as International Day for Conservation of Mangroves. Task force to be set up. Manisha Patnakarm Haiskar, Principal Secretary, Maharashtra Environment and Climate Change Department, said the department would be setting up a task force to conduct a fresh exercise to identify, demarcate, and preserve wetlands left out of coastal zones and inland areas in the state. We will be looking at all the wetlands, even those that may have been left out, for our latest inventory in an attempt to protect as many wetlands as possible across Maharashtra. The minister is already planning to meet with all the district collectors in the state, she said. UP gets big chunk of Clean Ganga funds, Indian rupee 3535 crore of the 10,972 Indian rupees crore given by Finance Ministry has been allocated to the state. Cleaning in progress, National Mission for Clean Ganga workers spraying bioremediation solution at Das Hashwamed Ghat in Varanasi. File Fat Opti. Jacob Kashi, New Delhi. The National Mission for Clean Ganga, NMCG, conceived as a Indian rupee 20,000 crore program in 2014 to clean up the river, has so far been allocated 15,074 Indian rupees crore. Of this, only 10,972 Indian rupees crore, or about 2/3, has been released by the Finance Ministry to the NMCG, a body under the Jal Shakti Ministry, according to a response to a question in the Rajya Sabha on Monday. The NMCG further allocates the money to the riverine states. Gajendra Shekhawat, Jal Shakti Minister, said in a written response to a question by Congress MP Mallikarjun Kharge that several sets of interventions for cleaning and rejuvenation of the river had been taken up, such as treating domestic sewage, industrial effluent and solid waste, riverfront management, maintaining ecological flow, rural sanitation, afforestation, biodiversity conservation, and public participation. The planned outlay for the Ganga cleanup mission, accounting for future costs, is well over 20,000 Indian rupees crore. Overall, 346 projects had been taken up at a sanctioned cost of 30,235 Indian rupees crore, out of which 158 projects are completed, the reply said. An NMCG official told The Hindu that the agency had approached the Finance Ministry for funds to meet the sanctioned cost. Some of the allotted funds reflect the investments in Ganga cleanup programs all the way from 1985. The amount sanctioned is much higher because they are sewage treatment infrastructure projects with government support until 15 years from the present, said DP Mathuria, Executive Director, NMCG. The funding is critical because as of June 30, 1,040.63 Indian rupees crore was available with NMCG under the Namami Ganj program, said Mr. Shekhawat. Uttar Pradesh, at 3,535 Indian rupees crore, has received the most funds, followed by Bihar, 2,631 Indian rupees crore, Bengal, 1,030 Indian rupees cr, and Uttarakhand, 1,001 Indian rupees cr. Sewerage projects for towns along the Ganga in Uttarakhand have already been completed for pollution abatement under the Namami Gange program, and the mission has been focusing on rejuvenation of tributaries of the Ganga with priority on the polluted stretches, said a statement from the NMCG on July 17. Lok Sabha passes 2 bills amid protests by opposition. They are the first to be cleared in the monsoon session. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. Both houses of parliament saw repeated adjournments on Monday, as opposition members continued their protests over allegations of snooping using the Israeli spyware Pegasus and the controversial agricultural reform laws. The Lok Sabha was adjourned for the day after it cleared 2 bills, amid the din. The Factoring Regulation, Amendment, Bill, 2020, and the National Institutes of Food Technology, Entrepreneurship and Management Bill, 2021, were passed by voice vote. The proceedings of the Rajya Sabha were adjourned 5 times before being called off early for the day, as opposition members continued raising slogans against the government. Chairman M. Venkaiah Naidu said the persistent disruptions had cost the members their opportunity to raise issues of public importance. Mr. Naidu said important matters about COVID-19 vaccines, the alleged attacks on press freedom and even the chance to seek clarifications from the government on the Pegasus issue were denied. He said 57 matters raised by 63 members had been permitted last week, but none of them could be taken up due to the disruptions. On Monday, too, there were 12 matters admitted for 0 hour. We are becoming helpless day by day, Mr. Naidu said. In the Lok Sabha, discussions on the 2 bills could not take place as the opposition members raised slogans demanding a discussion on the Pegasus issue and the farmers' demand for the repeal of the 3 farm laws. Rama Devi, who was chairing the proceedings, urged protesting members to return to their seats and participate in the discussions. When that did not happen, she went ahead with the consideration and passing of the bills. Minister for Parliamentary Affairs Pralhad Joshi and Minister of State Arjun Ram Meghwal also urged members to return to their seats and participate in the discussions. Factoring Regulation. While Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman spoke before moving the Factoring Regulation Bill, giving a bit of background on why the amendments were being made, Food Processing Minister Pashupati Kumar Paras simply moved the bill for consideration and passing. The Factoring Bill, Ms. Sitharaman said, was for the benefit of the medium and small-scale enterprises and that the bill had accepted all the changes suggested by the Standing Committee. Kovind pays homage to martyrs. Inclement weather prevents the President's visit to Kargil Memorial at Dras. Ode to the Brave, President Ramnath Kovind laying a wreath at the Dagger War Memorial in Kashmir on Monday. The Hindu Nissar Ahmed. Pirzada Ashik Srinagar. President Ramnath Kovind, who could not fly to Kargil due to inclement weather, on Monday laid a wreath at the Dagger War Memorial, Baramulla, to pay tributes to all the soldiers who sacrificed their lives in defending the nation. President Kovind, accompanied by senior army officers, reached Baramulla from Srinagar after his chopper could not take off due to bad weather and difficult flying conditions around Zojila Pass in central Kashmir, officials said. He was scheduled to pay homage at the Kargil War Memorial in Dras on the 22nd anniversary of Kargil Vijay Diwas. The President, who was accompanied by J&K Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha, was received by Major General Virendra Vats, General Officer Commanding, Baramulla Division. The President interacted with the soldiers of Baramulla Division and wished them luck for all future endeavors, an official said. Later Mr. Kovind chaired a high-level meeting of the Unified High Command at the Raj Bhawan. Attended by top security officials of different wings, including Army and the police, the President was briefed about the security situation in the wake of abrogation of Article 370, anti-militancy operations, and infiltration. Sources said President Kovind praised the role of security forces in combating militancy. India engages Taliban but questions Pakistan's support. Jaishankar to share detailed assessment with Blinken. S. Jaishankar will also talk about his visits to Doha, Moscow, and Tashkent. Suhasini Haidar, New Delhi. India is engaging all stakeholders in Afghanistan, including some parts of the Taliban, as part of a multi-track strategy necessitated by the advance of the Taliban militants on the ground, according to official sources, who for the first time confirmed the talks are ongoing. The talks with the militant group don't dilute India's concerns over the Taliban's recent military gains, and Pakistan's support to Taliban fighters, but signify that a negotiated power-sharing agreement is now seen as the best-case scenario for Afghanistan. We support the Afghan government. We deal with them irrespective of who is in power. We are in constant touch with Afghan leaders from all ethnic backgrounds. We have participated at the Doha conference inauguration and later on also have been in meetings with the Taliban. We believe Afghans deserve peace, and if we have to be in touch with all stakeholders and regional countries, we will be, the sources explained. Purported hold. According to the government's latest assessment, the Taliban is attempting to acquire territory to the south and border posts of Afghanistan, and will accelerate its efforts to take major cities once the US completes its pullout of troops at the end of August. In particular, the assessment has found that while the Taliban holds territory considerably less than media speculation of 85%, and pegs its reach to only about 45–50%, it is in a position to establish control of one or more of the southern provinces including Kandahar, Helmand, Ghazni, and Paktia. The detailed assessment does not predict the fall of Kabul at present, but that the next 3 or 4 months will be crucial to decide Afghanistan's future. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is expected to share this perception with U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on Wednesday in Delhi, pointing out that the U.S. air support and international financial assistance would be necessary to stave off the Taliban's onslaught against the Afghanistan National Defense and Security Forces, ANSF, along with a check on Pakistan's continued support to the Taliban. He would also discuss the outcome of his recent visits to Doha, Dushanbe, Moscow, Tehran, and Tashkent, all of which focused on the situation in Afghanistan and India's concerns about Pakistan's role. In particular, the sources cited recent reports from international news agencies and videos that showed Taliban fighters being treated in Pakistani hospitals, and identified hospitals in the border town of Chaman and Quetta as places where those injured in the fighting with the ANSF near the border post at Spin Boldak were brought. The sources said many of those killed and injured also held Pakistani identity cards, which was one of the reasons Afghanistan President Ashraf Ghani had, at a conference in Tashkent this month, openly blamed Islamabad for failing to stop the flow of 10,000 jihadis, who he said had entered Afghanistan from Pakistan and other countries in the past month. Pressurizing Pakistan. On Sunday, Maya officials involved in the planning of talks during Mr. Blinken's visit had also said they would discuss the need for sustained pressure on Pakistan on terror financing and terror havens. However, it is far from clear how much the US will be willing to criticize Pakistan publicly, given that it is deeply engaged with its military and political leadership on pushing the Taliban towards some sort of a face-saving peace agreement before the US pulls out all its troops. Earlier this month, the US also announced a new connectivity quad comprising U.S. Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan. In New Delhi, the move is seen as part of the U.S.'s search for a role in Afghanistan post-pullout, amidst reports that American officials are discussing acquiring a base in Central Asia, and also negotiating shelter for those in Afghanistan who have helped their forces and hence, targeted by the Taliban. Death toll in rain and landslips climbs to 164 in Maharashtra. 100 persons are still missing while nearly 2.3 lakh people have been evacuated. Towards safety, an NDRF team undertaking a rescue operation at Shirali village in Kolhapur on Monday. At 6 Andravadadaras/PTI. Shaumajit Banerjee, Pune. Maharashtra officials on Monday said that 164 persons had lost their lives while 100 persons were missing in the landslips and rain-related accidents caused by the unprecedented downpour that has lashed the western part of the state and the coastal Konkan region since July 22. In Raigad district alone, 71 persons died in the landslips which buried Tali village in Mahad Tahsil and Sakar Sutarwadi and Kevnal in Paladpur Taluk. Satara district reported 41 deaths in the landslips at Murjiayan and Ambaghar villages. More than 25,500 head of livestock have been engulfed by the floodwaters or buried. The scale of the destruction and loss is estimated to be even worse than the 2019 floods which ravaged Kolhapur and Sangli in western Maharashtra or the Malin landslip of 2014 when more than 150 persons were killed. It is estimated that 1,028 villages have been afflicted by the rain since July 22, with nearly 400 of these in Kolhapur district and 120 in Satara. A consolidated assessment of the damage in the Konkan, especially in Chiplun and Keet in Ratnagiri district, which are among the worst hit, is expected soon. Nearly 2.3 lakh people have been evacuated, said official reports, while the livelihood of 1.95 lakh people is said to have been hit in Kolhapur alone. The damage assessments from other districts in Konkan and western Maharashtra have yet to come in. After 4 days of arduous efforts in severely inclement weather, authorities have finally called off rescue operations in Tali village, with the 31 missing persons to be declared dead after due process. After seeking the opinion of the NDRF, the SDRF and other rescue teams, and respecting the sentiments of the survivors and relatives of the missing people, we have accordingly withdrawn our rescue teams from Tali, said Raigad Collector Chaudhary. Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray, who was due to visit rain-battered Satara on Monday, was compelled to abandon his visit after the helicopter in which he was travelling could not land owing to poor visibility. Land use change disrupted Kinnaur's ecology, says study development projects could up the risk of landslips. A stretch of road that was damaged by the recent landslip in Kinnaur. Vikas Vasudev Chandigarh. After 9 people lost their lives in a landslip in Himachal Pradesh's Kinnaur district, a debate surrounding the degradation of the environment in this ecological sensitive hill terrain is bound to gain momentum. A recent study suggests that both hydropower projects and afforestation efforts, carried out as compensation for the forest land diverted for hydropower projects in the name of mitigation, have altered land use and are negatively impacting the forest ecosystems. The study, titled Mitigation, or Myth: Impacts of Hydropower Development and Compensatory Afforestation on Forest Ecosystems in the High Himalayas, was undertaken by Mansi Asher and Prakash Bhandari, environmentalists associated with the Himdhara Environment Research and Action Collective. It was published in the Land Use Policy Journal of January 2021. The study, conducted between 2012 and 2016, used information from government records and ground research to examine the extent, nature, and impact of forest diversion for hydropower projects in Kinnaur. Our study found that not only have construction activities for hydropower projects impacted existing land use, disturbed forest biodiversity and fragmented the forest landscape, but the related compensatory afforestation plantations are also ridden with problems. These include abysmally low presence of surviving saplings up to 10%, interspecies conflict, infringement on local land usage and damage by wildfires and landslips, said Ms. Asher. She said studies show that the tunneling in mountain areas will result in the risk of more landslips as large amounts of water percolate into surfaces. The use of dynamite for blasting through the surfaces and underground components of the projects disturb existing slopes and the fragile geology. Shantakumar Neki, president of the Kinnaur-based environment conservation organization Hangrang Sangharsh Samitai, told The Hindu that over the years, climate change is visible. The conditions of Kinnaur are not favorable for hydropower projects. Construction activities include blasting, which has to be done in a scientific manner, but the ground reality is that there's hardly any check on the frequency of blasting. We are not against development, but Kinnaur is environmentally fragile, and this fact should not be ignored. Development at the cost of human lives is not acceptable, said Mr. Neki. 9 tourists were killed after boulders fell on their vehicle in a landslip near Bastari in Kinnaur district on July 25. Thank you. International news. Tunisian President sacks government. Kais Saied orders parliament closed for 30 days, a move the largest party decried as a coup d'état. On the boil, security officers holding back protesters outside the parliament in Tunis on Monday. A Fethi Balade. Agents France Presse Tunis. Street clashes erupted on Monday outside Tunisia's army-barricaded parliament, a day after President Kais Saied ousted the prime minister and suspended the legislature, plunging the young democracy into a constitutional crisis. Mr. Saied sacked Prime Minister Hichem Mekichi and ordered parliament closed for 30 days, a move the biggest political party Ennahda decried as a coup, following a day of angry street protests against the government's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Soldiers from early Monday blockaded the assembly in Tunis while, outside, the president's backers hurled stones, bottles, and insults at supporters of the Islamist-inspired Ennahda, whose leader was barred entry to the complex. Troops also surrounded the office of Mr. Mekichi, who was yet to officially react to the events rocking the North African country. On Monday afternoon, the presidency announced the dismissals of Defense Minister Ibrahim Bardaji and Hassan Ben Slimane, the acting Justice Minister. Mr. Said's move, a decade on from Tunisia's 2011 revolution, often held up as the Arab Spring's sole success story, comes even as the constitution enshrines a parliamentary democracy. It is a coup d'état against the revolution and against the constitution, Ennahda, the lead party in Tunisia's ruling coalition, charged in a Facebook post, warning that its members will defend the revolution. Months-long deadlock. The crisis follows months of deadlock between the president, the premier, and Ennahda chief Rached Ghannouchi, which has crippled the COVID-19 response as deaths have surged to one of the world's highest per capita rates. The rivalry has blocked ministerial appointments and diverted resources from tackling economic and social problems. Mr. Said declared that he had taken the necessary decisions to save Tunisia, the state, and the Tunisian people, after a day where street protests over COVID-19 flared in multiple cities. The president, who under the constitution controls the armed forces, warned his opponents against taking up arms, threatening that if anyone fires a single bullet, our forces will respond with a rain of bullets. Tunisian police also shuttered the local bureau of Qatar-based Al Jazeera television, the network's Tunis director Lotfi Haji said, warning that what is happening is very dangerous. It is proof that freedom of the press is threatened. The president's power grab sparked jubilant rallies on Sunday by thousands of his supporters who flooded the streets of the capital, waving the national flag and sounding their car horns as fireworks lit up the sky. But the shock move was criticized abroad, with Germany urging a rapid return to constitutional order. The foreign ministry in Turkey, where the government supports Ennahda, said it was deeply concerned and called for democratic legitimacy to be restored. Stalemate in ties as U.S. China officials trade barbs. Neither side appeared willing to concede ground in talks. Tough talks, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Tianjin. Reuters. Department of State. Ananth Krishnan. Monday's talks between senior American and Chinese officials in the city of Tianjin underlined a stalemate in relations, officials said, as both sides traded barbs and demands with little prospect of either appearing willing to concede any ground. Chinese officials for the first time presented two lists of demands to visiting U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman, while the U.S. side repeated its concerns over Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and other Chinese actions, concerns that Beijing has rebuffed as interference in its internal affairs. China's Vice Foreign Minister Xie Feng slammed U.S. calls for a rules-based international order, calls also voiced by the U.S., India, Australia, Japan Quad grouping, describing it as an effort by the United States and a few other Western countries to frame their own rules as international rules and impose them on other countries. The purpose is to resort to the tactic of changing the rules to make life easy for itself and hard for others, and to introduce the law of the jungle where might is right and the big bully the small, the Chinese Foreign Ministry quoted him as saying. China put forward two lists during the talks, called the list of U.S. wrongdoings that must stop and the list of key individual cases that China has concerns with, the South China Morning Post reported. In the first, Beijing demanded Washington unconditionally revoke the visa restrictions over Communist Party of China, CPC, members and their families, revoke sanctions on Chinese leaders, officials, and government agencies, and remove visa restrictions on Chinese students. Beijing has also asked the U.S. to revoke the extradition request for Chinese tech giant Huawei's chief financial officer Meng Wanzhou, also the daughter of Huawei founder Ren Zhengfei, who has been under house arrest in Canada pending extradition. Downturn in relations. While the Chinese side entirely blamed the U.S. for the downturn in relations, with Mr. Xie accusing the U.S. of treating China as an imagined enemy, Ms. Sherman underlined U.S. concerns about a range of PRC actions that run counter to our values and interests and those of our allies and partners, and that undermine the international rules-based order, State Department spokesperson Ned Price said in a statement. In particular, she raised our concerns about human rights, including Beijing's anti-democratic crackdown in Hong Kong, the ongoing genocide and crimes against humanity in Xinjiang, abuses in Tibet, and the curtailing of media access and freedom of the press, he said. She also spoke about our concerns about Beijing's conduct in cyberspace, across the Taiwan Strait, and in the East and South China Seas. The Deputy Secretary also raised concerns about the PRC's unwillingness to cooperate with the World Health Organization and allow a second-phase investigation in the PRC into COVID-19's origins. She also affirmed the importance of cooperation in areas of global interest, such as the climate crisis, counter-narcotics, non-proliferation, and regional concerns including DPRK, Iran, Afghanistan, and Burma, the State Department said. Solih asks Maldivians to rise against extremism. President's comments come after Nasheed urged him to course correct. Mohammed Solih. Mira Srinivasan, Colombo. Maldives President Ibrahim Mohammed Solih on Monday called upon citizens to rise against religious extremism, in order to safeguard the country's independence and sovereignty. In a special address to mark the Indian Ocean island nation's 57th Independence Day, Mr. Solih said some erroneously believe in and propagandize bloodshed in the name of Islam. Every one of us who wish to safeguard the independence and sovereignty of the Maldives must readily rise against this dangerous movement, he said, adding, those countries, particularly a number of Islamic countries embattled by war and unrest, have been swept by this very extremist ideology. The president's reference to threats of religious extremism comes weeks after parliamentary speaker and former President Mohammed Nasheed urged him to course correct before it is too late, amid a growing rift between the two leaders from the country's ruling Maldivian Democratic Party, MDP. Mr. Nasheed is currently in the UK, recovering from the multiple injuries sustained in an explosion targeting him in Male on May 6. Maldivian police, who termed the incident a terror attack, have so far arrested 10 persons in connection with the case. No evidence of a direct link between them and ISIS has been found yet, the police chief told a media conference on Saturday. However, the suspects support ISIS, and are involved in propagating the terror group's ideology in the Maldives, he said. Recurring concern. Religious extremism has been a recurring concern in the Maldives, from where dozens are known to have joined the Islamic State terror group as fighters in Syria and Iraq. Further, extremist groups in the Maldives have in the past been linked to the murder cases of dissident journalists and bloggers who sought to challenge their ideology. While acknowledging the problem in his speech on Monday, President Solih emphasized that legal actions alone will not solve the issues of religious extremism, or blasphemy directed at Islam that caused social discord. The lasting solution to these two issues is instilling Islamic faith in our children, he said. His government exploring options within the education system to resolve the matter. As long as such divisive forces exist in our society, our peace and harmony will be at persistent risk of disruption. Our position to manage other major crises will be consequently weakened if we allow our national affairs to spiral to that extent, President Solih said. Afghan conflict is having devastating impact. Around 1,659 civilians killed, 3,254 wounded in first half of 2021, says UN report. Mounting toll, a convoy of Afghan special forces at a checkpost in the Kandahar province on July 13. Reuters Danish City. Agents France presse Kabul. The United Nations warned on Monday that Afghanistan could see the highest number of civilian deaths in more than a decade if the Taliban's offensives across the country are not halted. Violence has surged since May, when the insurgents cranked up operations to coincide with the final withdrawal of U.S.-led foreign forces. In a report released on Monday documenting civilian casualties for the first half of 2021, the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA, said it expected figures to touch their highest single-year level since the mission began reporting over a decade ago. It also warned that Afghan troops and pro-government forces were responsible for a quarter of all civilian casualties. Unprecedented numbers of Afghan civilians will perish and be maimed this year if the increasing violence is not stemmed, UNAMA head Deborah Lyons said in a statement. I implore the Taliban and Afghan leaders to take heed to the conflict's grim and chilling trajectory and its devastating impact on civilians. During the first half of 2021, some 1,659 civilians were killed and another 3,254 wounded, the UNAMA report said, a 47% increase on the same period last year. The rise in civilian casualties was particularly sharp in May and June, with 783 civilians killed and 1,609 wounded, it added. Particularly shocking and of deep concern is that women, boys, and girls made up of close to half of all civilian casualties, the report said. Will accept woman linked to IS, Ardern. Agence France-Presse Wellington. New Zealand announced on Monday it would accept a woman linked to the Islamic State group and her 2 children. The New Zealand-born woman, widely identified as Suhaira Aden, moved to Australia at age 6 and was a dual national until Canberra stripped her of citizenship last year. Australian PM Scott Morrison had said terrorists who fought with terrorism organisations have forfeited their citizenship. New Zealand PM Jacinda Ardern said cancelling her citizenship would leave them stateless. They are not Turkey's responsibility, and with Australia refusing to accept the family, that makes them ours, she said in a statement on Monday. U.K. could bar China firm from nuclear projects. Agence France-Presse London. Britain is investigating ways to block China's state-owned nuclear energy company from all future power projects in the UK, amid chilling relations between London and Beijing, according to reports Monday. The move could see China General Nuclear, CGN, excluded from several projects, including a consortium planning to build a nuclear plant on the Suffolk coast in eastern England, according to the Financial Times newspaper. British government sources said the decision could also impact another planned plant in Essex, southeast England. It comes as UK-China relations have become increasingly strained on issues ranging from espionage and cyber attacks to human rights and Hong Kong. CGN is already working with France's EDF in the construction of a nuclear plant at Hinkley Point, in southwest England. Southern Europe battles wildfires as North cleans up after floods. France, Greece send aircraft to tackle Italy fires. Situation worsens, a firefighting helicopter in front of a thick cloud of smoke from a forest fire at Spathavouni village, near Corinth, in Greece. Up Valeri Gachi. Reuters Athens. Wildfires burned in regions across southern Europe on Monday, fueled by hot weather and strong winds, as some northern countries cleaned up after a weekend of torrential rain and flooding. In Greece, Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis said firefighters had battled around 50 fires during the past 24 hours, and it was likely there would be more, with meteorologists warning that a further heat wave was in prospect. On the Italian island of Sardinia, firefighting planes from France and Greece reinforced efforts to battle blazes. More than 4,000 hectares of forest were destroyed in the fire. In Spain, the northeastern region of Catalonia saw more than 1,500 hectares destroyed near Santa Coloma de Queralt, forcing dozens to be evacuated. Although the blazes were 90% stabilized on Monday, firefighters and authorities said. Conditions in southern Europe were in sharp contrast to the rainstorms that lashed northern countries from Austria to UK following the catastrophic flooding in Germany and neighboring countries last week. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this video as a podcast. Do like, share and comment. Press the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to get new notifications. Thank you. Take care and stay safe. God bless you all. Jai Ma Bharti. To download news and editorials in mp3, follow us on Telegram, Virtual School Official. The link is provided in the description below.